And when I read this list from the CDC website, I hope that any of you who still think that cruising is the problem and theme parks should be left alone, I hope that this changes your mind. It is Sunday, January 2nd. On this week's edition of Sunday Sofa Time, I'm talking about how dangerous cruising is. Thanks everybody who came to the live chat yesterday on the first day of 2022. It was a really fun way to sort of begin the new year for me. It was one of the biggest turnouts I've ever had at one of my live streams, and it was just so much fun to sit here and chat with all of you. I just realized I may be wearing exactly the same thing I wore. I'm on quarantine and isolation. You should see how much cat hair is on the sweatpants I have on right now. Marcus and I are feeling totally fine. We still have another 5 days that we have to stay in the apartment, but we are feeling totally fine. Everything's gonna be fine. As far as the live chat yesterday, I realized when I went back and scrolled through the comments really quickly that I missed some of your questions and some of your super chats, and I'm sorry about that. I do this on my own. I don't have somebody moderating with me to help, like push the questions and push the super chats like right in front of my eyes. So I apologize if I didn't get to your question. That doesn't mean it doesn't have anything to do with you. All right, I don't want to take, I'm gonna try not to go off on a lot of other tangents before I get into the nitty-gritty of what I want to talk about in this video, and I really hope that you stick around to listen to all the information that I've gathered here, all the information I want to present to you, because there's something on the CDC website, literally on the CDC website, that makes no sense whatsoever. And I know a lot of you are going to be like,
well, duh, it's the CDC website.
But I'm really upset about this. And one of the things that upsets me about it is I want to believe the CDC. I want to trust that what they are doing is for the safety and the well-being of all of us. But when you see these two things compared to each other, it makes no sense. So the first thing I want to talk about is their statement from just a couple days ago, where they put cruising back at the highest risk level. And what does it say here? They recommend that all travelers, even those who are vaccinated, should avoid cruises. This reflects increases in cases on board cruise ships since identification of the Omicron variant. The virus that causes COVID-19 spreads easily between people in close quarters on board cruise ships, is what it says here. And the chance of getting COVID-19 on cruise ships is very high, even if you're fully vaccinated and have received a COVID-19 vaccine booster dose. So the CDC is going out of its way to look at the cases that have been identified on cruise ships and saying, based on this number of cases identified, we would not recommend that you go on a cruise now. Let me remind you, in case you don't know, that every passenger on cruise ships at the moment, these are basically the same guidelines that all the cruises are following that are leaving from the United States. All passengers over the age of 12 have to be fully vaccinated, and everybody has to bring a negative test with them before they can board the ship. We know, obviously, that's not stopping cases from getting on board to the passengers, to the crew, but at least we know that before the cruise, anybody who tests positive is not going to be allowed onto the cruise. Then when you're on board, masks are required in all indoor spaces unless you're sitting down to eat or drink, or sitting down and distance from other people. And from my experience on the 6 cruises I was on in 2021, that was enforced pretty strictly on almost all of the cruises at all times. So those are some very strict measures that are enforced for cruise passengers. And yeah, like I said, we know the cases are rising, but it's because all these people are being tested, and that's why these cases are being identified. If you look at the numbers all together across, Germany here or the United States, the cases all together, not just cruise passengers, are going way up at the moment. Like I said, Marcus and I have it. We tested positive. We had mild flu-like symptoms, and it seems to me, at least from the information that I've seen, that even though a lot of people are getting it right now, the numbers of people who are landing in the hospital with it are lower than they have been for other variants, strains of this ugly thing. Anyways, so now I want to look at the measures that are in place at the theme parks in Florida, what I saw when I was there a couple weeks ago, and what has changed since then. And then I have to read to you the list of recommendations and moderate, higher, and highest risk. This list that is on the CDC website for amusement parks and carnivals. Between December 5th and December 21st, I visited Legoland, Busch Gardens, Disney's Animal Kingdom, Disney's Hollywood Studios, Universal Studios, Islands of Adventure, and SeaWorld's Discovery Cove. The only parks where masks were required to be worn in the indoor parts of the queues or in indoor settings was the Disney parks. And I would say the enforcement there was somewhat strict, but people who were not interested in following these guidelines had a pretty easy time of not following the guidelines. Also, I'm not sure if the park's capacity is still reduced, and if it is, holy shit, because it was
crowded.
We waited over an hour for some rides. We saw queues for Avatar, queues for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, over 2 hours. So how can that be reduced capacity? The cruise ships, as far as I know, are still at reduced capacity, but the theme parks don't seem to be. I couldn't find any clear information about that. So if anybody knows exactly what capacity the cruise ships are allowed to operate now in comparison to the capacity that the theme parks are allowed to operate right now, please let me know in the comments. So at the theme parks at Disney, when I was there, masks were required in indoor places, and I did see some enforcement happening. Over at the Universal parks and at Busch Gardens, at the time I was there, in the middle of December, masks were only recommended and not required. So remember, on cruise ships, masks required, indoor spaces. At Universal Studios, at the time I was there, they were only recommended. It was absolutely not enforced, and I would say only about 20% of the people that I saw there were wearing some kind of facial covering while indoors. That has since changed, but from the way that I saw Universal running it, I can't imagine that they're really doing a big thing to enforce it, but I haven't been there since they changed the rules, so I don't know. In order to be one of the thousands and thousands of people who visit Disney or Universal each day, you do not have to be tested and you do not have to be vaccinated. Anybody in any sort of situation can go to the parks. So that is a huge difference over cruising. People don't know their status when they go to the parks, and many of these people haven't even been vaccinated. A major difference. And when I read this list from the CDC website, I hope that any of you who still think that cruising is the problem and theme parks should be left alone, I hope that this changes your mind. This list, it says here, and it's on the cdc.gov website, risk levels of COVID-19 spread at traveling amusement parks and carnivals. I know it says traveling there. There isn't a list that I could find on the CDC website for permanent amusement parks and carnivals. There is one for parks and monuments, but it's basically the same list. So you can see here we have moderate risk, higher risk, and highest risk. The highest risk for visiting amusement parks and carnivals, it says, would be if park operations are open at full capacity with no modifications to allow for social distancing. And like I said, I'm not sure about the capacity allowance at the parks. However, they were so full that there was no social distancing. Highest risk for visiting amusement parks and carnivals, according to the CDC at the moment, check. Number one, park operations are not allowing social distancing. Check. That is happening. The next thing on the list of the highest risk situation for visiting amusement parks and carnivals would be no masks are worn. And at least when I was there a couple weeks ago at Universal and Busch Gardens, check. That is happening. The highest risk happening at theme parks. Number 3 in this list of 5 things that the CDC says would be the highest risk situation for visiting amusement parks and theme parks would be that staff members are assisting riders with seating and rides are not modified to allow for social distancing. Check. That's what's happening. Staff members are walking around, some of them with masks, some of them without masks, some of them with masks pulled down to their chin, checking lap bars, assisting people in and out. So this is happening, highest risk, visiting amusement parks. The next thing on the list is that games that require a host and that allow multiple players at the same time are offered without a limitation on the number of players. And I can tell you from what I saw when I was there, check, this is happening. I'm talking about those games where, everybody sits in a row and you have to throw the balls in to make the horses go along. I saw those games operating. I saw people walking around with those prizes. So check. The following thing is the only thing that I can't actually confirm, but I'm pretty sure about, and it says that cleaning and disinfection of frequently touched surfaces and shared objects is only happening once a day. Now, I can't confirm that these things are being cleaned more than once a day. What I can tell you is, in our time, in all those parks that I just listed, Busch Gardens, 2 Disney parks, 2 Universal parks, Discovery Cove is a little bit different. We're just swimming all day. But at none of those theme parks did I once see any ride stopped in order for them to clean the lap bars, to clean the headrest, to clean the turnstiles. I didn't see any of that happening at all. Compared to the theme parks I visited here in Europe, where I saw it very often, like this clip of when we were in Phantasialand, where you can see them, holding the train to walk around and clean the surfaces. I didn't see that happen once in our visit to any of the parks in December. So this is one that I can't really confirm, but all the other ones are operating at the highest risk according to the CDC. And my question is, why is nobody talking about that? Why does the CDC feel the need to modify their statement and add the word on cruise ships and send it out across the world, where this list of what they're saying would be the highest risk for theme parks is way more evident and happening for way more people every day? But let's just ignore that. We'll forget about that. And in fact, this list hasn't even been updated since December 30th, 2020. I don't get it. Can somebody help me make sense of this? If what the CDC is saying about the risk level on cruise ships is true and something that we really need to be worried about, then
it's way worse at the theme parks, honey.
Something's not right here. Somebody is not doing a good job. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conspiracy theory comments and things like that in the comments to this video. I just don't get it anymore. My opinion is, yes, leaving your house at the moment, whatever you do, you have a very high risk of contracting COVID. It seems like everybody's gonna get it again now. If you hadn't had it yet, it seems like now's the time to get it. But why the CDC keeps, I would say, picking on the cruise lines and ignoring these other things, it makes no sense to me, and it makes me lose my faith in the work they're doing, and I really think that's a pity. And because of that, I can also totally understand then why there are so many people saying, well, they said we need to get vaccinated, but then you find these things and it's like, well, why trust them? They said we need to wear masks, but you see these discrepancies and it's like, okay, well, maybe that doesn't make sense either. I can totally understand that now. That doesn't mean that I'm going to change the way I act when I go outside and when I'm in groups of people and things like that, but I can understand why other people do. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below, especially if there was something that you heard in this video that made you think,
oh, wait a second,
that sort of changed your view on it. I would be particularly interested to know if that happened. And until then, now will come the time on Sunday Sofa Time where I comment on your comments live on air. In the Sunday Sofa Time that I uploaded on Christmas Day, I talked about how sad we were that we had to leave Florida, how we had such a great time there.
Even though we got COVID.
The house that we stayed in was fantastic. I've made another video about that as well. Let me say a special thank you to Alex again for making that possible. Anyways, these comments are on that video, and the first one is from When You're Here. When You're Here writes, quoted me to say, "It's hard to think that some other family is sitting on the couch and in the pool. Laughy face, laughy face, laughy face. Morgan is so funny." I love to know that it makes me feel good when I know that my videos make you laugh and make you smile. I love to entertain you. I'm a born entertainer, so I love reading comments like this. And yeah, I mean, it's hard for me. Marcus and I were talking about it last night that by the end of the time we were there, we really felt like we lived there, like you kind of get into your rhythm and you know where things are, and you know when you walk up the stairs, what railing that you grab to turn the corner and stuff like that. It just seems like you live in a place like that when you stay in a house, and it feels like it was ours. It's hard to believe that there are other people. There's been probably 2 families there since we were there that have had the exact same experience and go away feeling like, okay, this is our house now. But, you kind of share it with everybody. So that's what I mean about that. Next comment is from Emily Bartleson. Emily writes, "As a Floridian, avoid I-4 at all costs. LOL, even if we have to pay tolls, we choose that over I-4. Glad you had a great trip." Yeah, I kind of figured that, Emily, and it didn't matter what time we were on I-4, if it was in the early morning or if it was later at night. I-4 just seemed to be gridlocked almost all the time. I asked in that video to my Floridian friends if there's a tip for how to get around the parks without getting stuck in traffic, and it kind of seems like
Nope, not really.
And that's a huge difference over when I was a cast member there 23 years ago or whatever. I don't remember waiting in traffic jams all the time when I was working there in the 90s, so that's definitely changed. Final comment is from Libby Rahl. This is something I don't understand. Libby writes, "I love the way you say Foley, kind of like Tony's carousing. Also fun to watch your enthusiasm for everything. Fully? How does everybody else say fully?" And Tony says carousing instead of cruising, I guess. I don't take this as criticism. I'm curious. How does everybody else say fully? I hope that this first couple days of 2022 have been great. I hope that you have a positive outlook for this year. And I'm so glad you're here with me again in front of the red sofa. Have a great day, everybody, and I will see you soon.